I lost everything in a single fire: my home, my memories, and the only place I once belonged. When I went to my son's house to ask for shelter, he coldly refused, saying he and his fiancée needed privacy. In despair, I called my first love, a man I hadn't seen in 40 years. When the door opened, he looked at me and said just 3 words: "You finally came home." And from that moment, my life changed forever. But before we continue, make sure you've subscribed to the channel and comment where you're watching this video from. We'd love to know how far our stories travel. My name is Anna, and at 65 years old, it all began with a faint burning smell, the kind that makes your heart race before your mind even understands why. When I opened the living room door, I felt like I had stepped straight into hell. A wall of blazing fire roared before me, devouring the curtains and racing up the ceiling. The sound of shattering glass and crackling wood filled the air. I screamed, but my voice was drowned out by the furious hiss of the flames. The smoke was so thick I could no longer see my own hands. My throat burned, my lungs felt as if they were on fire. I fumbled for my phone, but my trembling hands couldn't find it. The heat seared my skin, my eyes stung, and when I finally stumbled toward the back door, a deafening explosion shook the ground beneath me. I turned around just in time to see my home, the place where I had lived, loved, and raised my dreams, collapsing into an ocean of fire. The red glow lit up the night sky, and that's when I realized this nightmare was real. I had lost everything right before my eyes. The next morning, I gathered what little courage I had left, hugged the borrowed suitcase close to my chest, and went to my son's house. I believed, no matter what had happened, my own child wouldn't let his mother face such despair alone. When David opened the door, I saw in his eyes a familiar reflection of his father, the same calm gaze that had comforted me for years, but his voice was colder than I ever imagined. "Mom, Victoria and I talked. We need our privacy." Those words fell into my heart, heavy and sharp. I sat on the spotless sofa, feeling like a stranger in my own child's home. Everything was perfect. The shining floors, the faint scent of perfume, the well-arranged flowers. Everything except me. David avoided my eyes, while Victoria smiled politely, her tone gentle yet distant. I had come seeking comfort, but all I heard was the quiet sound of a door closing inside my heart. That rejection, that quiet, polite rejection, felt colder than the night my house burned down. I left my son's home that gray afternoon, clutching my small suitcase as if it were the last thread tying me to the world. I rented a cheap hotel room on a corner street, the kind with narrow hallways that smelled of cigarette smoke and carpets worn thin by time. Inside, there was only a hard bed, a mildewed curtain, and the dull hum of an old air conditioner. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at my calloused hands, wondering how an entire life could fit into a single suitcase. I had lost my home, my husband, and now even the warmth of family. Every knock on the hallway door made me flinch, afraid the manager might come to evict me for missing rent. As night fell, the neon light from outside filtered through the dirty window, painting cold streaks across my face. I wept silently, not just for what I had lost, but for the unbearable truth that I no longer had a place to return to. For 3 nights, I lay on that stiff bed, listening to the sound of cars rushing by and strangers arguing outside. Each morning, I woke with a sore back and a heavier heart. I thought I had reached the deepest pit of loneliness, but while sorting through my old wallet, I found something I thought was long gone, an old business card. It was worn, yellowed, the ink faded with time. On it was the name Randall Galloway, my first love, the man I adored when life was still full of dreams. Just seeing his name made my heart ache, a mixture of pain and warmth. I had kept that card for 40 years, as if it were a promise to myself. "I'll come back for you," he once said before leaving. And now, when I had nothing left, that memory was all I had. I held the card in my trembling hand and wondered, did he still remember me? Maybe, just maybe, one phone call could give me the answer. I sat for a long time in front of the cheap hotel phone, my hands trembling as I held the worn business card. Every number I dialed made my heart beat faster, as if the moment the phone rang, the past might shatter. 1 ring, 2 rings, and then that familiar voice, deep and warm, like a memory coming back to life, answered, Randall Galloway speaking. In that instant, I forgot how to breathe. 40 years dissolved into nothing. All that remained was the young girl who once believed in innocent promises. I stammered, "Randall, it's Anna." Silence. Then, softly, his voice quivered, like a breeze touching my heart. "Anna, is it really you?" Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. I told him everything. The fire, my son, how I had nowhere left to go. He didn't ask for details. He only said, "Give me the address. I'm coming to get you." I tried to refuse, but his tone was firm. After 40 years, he was still the man who kept his word. He came back for me. Less than an hour later, a silver Mercedes stopped in front of the shabby hotel. When the door opened, I saw Randall. His hair now silvered, his amber eyes still deep and kind. Time had changed everything, except the smile that still made my heart tremble. I stepped toward him, awkward and ashamed of my cheap clothes and weary face. But he just looked at me for a long moment, then whispered 3 words. "You look beautiful." I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. All the fear, shame, and pain I had carried spilled out at once. Randall said nothing. He simply wrapped his arms around me, his warm hand resting gently on my trembling shoulder. The faint scent of his cologne, his steady breathing, that quiet sense of safety, they reminded me that I was still someone worthy of love. When he opened the car door and said softly, "Let's go home," I realized I wasn't just leaving that dark little hotel room behind. I was escaping the loneliness that had imprisoned me for years. Randall's home felt like something out of a dream, spacious, peaceful, and bathed in golden sunlight. He led me into a cozy kitchen, where the aroma of coffee mingled with the scent of wood and soft music. I sat there in silence, still unable to believe I was really there. Randall cooked for me, his strong, steady hands moving gracefully, as if he'd been preparing for this moment for 40 years. When he placed the plate in front of me, he smiled and said, "You're not a burden, Anna." I lowered my head, my chest swelling with emotion. That meal, simple as it was, tasted like rebirth. In his eyes, I was no longer a 65-year-old widow who had lost everything. I was the young woman he had once loved. And when he asked, "Will you stay now?" I felt my heart tremble for the first time in years, not from fear but from happiness. One evening, as we sat together by the fireplace, the flames casting a soft glow across Randall's face, he told me something he had never shared with anyone before. "You know," he said quietly, his voice low and steady, "5 years ago, I almost got married." I looked up, my heart tightening. He went on to explain that she was perfect, beautiful, intelligent, admired by everyone. They had planned a grand, elegant wedding, but the night before the ceremony, he called it off. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Randall looked straight into my eyes, the amber in his gaze shimmering under the firelight. "Because I still loved you, Anna," he said softly. 40 years, and I never forgot. I froze, unable to speak. In that moment, I understood. True love isn't measured by time, but by the endurance of the heart. He reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. In that warmth, I realized something profound. What I thought was long lost had only been waiting to be found again. 3 weeks later, just as peace was beginning to settle into my life with Randall, the phone rang. The name on the screen, David, made my heart twist. I hesitated before answering. My son's voice came through, careful and polite, but oddly distant. "Mom, I think maybe we were too hasty. If you haven't found a place yet, you can come back home." I listened quietly, catching every word, but feeling nothing. His offer wasn't born from love. It came from curiosity. They had heard that I was now living in a beautiful house, with a successful man by my side. "Thank you, but I'm fine," I said, my voice calm and steady. There was a pause. Then David asked hesitantly, "Where are you, Mom? Who is he?" I looked around the sunlit kitchen, where Randall was pouring coffee and smiling gently at me. "He's someone who sees me as family," I replied softly. When I hung up, I knew. I had closed a chapter of my life, with my dignity intact. After that call, I sat by the window for a long time, watching the sunset spill its golden light over the garden. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for choosing myself. I finally understood. Sometimes, true love doesn't come from blood, but from the people who see you when you've become invisible to everyone else. Randall walked up behind me, placing a warm hand on my shoulder. "You don't owe anyone anything, Anna," he said gently. "You just need to live and be happy." Tibber. Those words lifted every weight off my heart. I had spent my whole life being a mother, a wife, a woman who endured. Now I just wanted to be me. In this home, I wasn't a burden, nor a remnant of the past. I was someone loved, heard, and seen. I smiled softly. Outside, the last light of day bathed the garden in a warm golden glow, and I knew I had finally found my true home. Not built from bricks or wood, but from the heart of someone who chose to love me. Our wedding took place in the small garden behind Randall's house, on a bright November morning filled with sunshine. There was no loud music, no grand white gown, only roses blooming along the porch, a gentle breeze, and a few close friends gathered as witnesses. I wore a simple blue dress. The color Randall said made my eyes shine. When the pastor asked, "Do you vow to love her for the rest of your life?" Randall squeezed my hand and replied softly, "I've already loved her for 40 years. I heard myself crying, but they were tears of joy, pure, quiet happiness. There was no pressure to be perfect, no fear of rejection, just two hearts finding each other again at a time when youth had long passed, but love had grown deeper. After the ceremony, we sat together under the porch, watching sunlight dance on our cups of coffee. I realized that true love doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to arrive at the right moment, when both hearts are